Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the first event in our winter seminar series, today created by the PDMI's Workshop Council, Fearless Predictions for 2024. We welcome all of you to today's event, PDMI members and non-members alike. If you're not a PDMI member but are attending today, we'd love to have you consider joining the association. There's no better way to support the mission of the PDMI than joining and sharing your voice in the direction of the industry. In the handouts tab of your control panel, you'll find our PDMI membership brochure. I urge you to download it, flip through it, and contact any of our team members should you desire more information. One more housekeeping note, the group will be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the webinar. As we look deeper into 2024, what's the buzz? How things play out in the linear streaming CTV wars remains of paramount importance to brands and their media buyers. At the same time, new technologies will continue to change the performance marketing game. What's next? Today, these leaders will share their visions of what the new year holds in store for performance marketers in this special one-hour event. Our Workshop Council Chair, Andrea Pass of Andrea Pass Public Relations, is here to moderate the group. Let's get it started. Andrea, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tom, and welcome everyone to the PDMI Workshop Council's 2024 Fearless Predictions webinar. We do this every single year, so it'll be interesting to see and hear what our panelists have in store for you. Let's start by welcoming our panelists. Joseph Gray is the founder of DRMetrix, an iSpot TV company. Lucio Maramba is the CEO and owner of Maramba Insights. And Lori Zeller is the managing partner of THOR Associates. So 2023 is in the rearview mirror, but the performance-driven marketing industry is consistently talking about connected TV, linear, streaming, audience fragmentation, multi-platform outreach, targeted audiences and data, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, and much, much more, including a year ahead that has a presidential election, the Olympics, and the increased news cycle surrounding wars such as the Middle East and Ukraine. So 2024 is going to prove to be a year of embracing growing technology and reaching new audiences using a variety of DR methods. So some of the things we're going to talk about today: how will the economy impact our industry? How will video content continue to grow? How are funnels changing the drive of behavior and sales? How are consumers who are overwhelmed by content, going to remember brand experiences? Will there be collaborations and data sharing between D2C clients and media buying agencies? How has social media changed the narrative? How will the presidential election and the Olympics impact media buys and spends? Will the coming year demonstrate an influx of well-established brands, or will we see emerging brands stepping up? So today, each of our panelists will have an opportunity to share 2 or 3 or 4 of their fearless predictions for 2024. So let's kick off today's discussion with Lori Zeller, the managing partner of THOR Associates. Lori, tell us all about your fearless predictions for the coming year.
Thank you, Andrea. That was a wonderful intro. And I agree, looking back into the rearview mirror sometimes doesn't give us what we need to see, but it gives us a way to remember to move forward. I'm not speaking only for myself. Fern and I actually put the whole team together. We added a lot of what I'm going to speak about today in the December results article that Tom put together on predictions. One of the predictions that we believe, and everyone's talking about it, is artificial intelligence, because we believe at THOR that it will continue to be instructive and constructive in developing specifically new creative assets. For example, think about pickup lines in a flub finish creative, or using graphics and voiceovers that are programmatically delivered through AI with personalization of messaging. This happened a little bit in the past, but we believe it's really going to forge ahead in the future. Along with those examples, we just want to keep everything relevant. We believe that AI will resurrect the human form while taking thoughts to another level. We believe the following are key bullet points. AI will replace humans, although the actors will be animation created. So just think about it. If you know what a film, a television program, something streaming, or a commercial looks like, and you think you're looking at a human being, it's really likely that you won't be in the future. Scary. AI will change the way color correction and audio sweetening are used, which means that AI will also replace jobs, which means that AI will change the economy and the economics of how creative is really produced. AI will write scripts, think ChatGPT. It's currently being used in script writing right now in a variety of ways, from generating unique story ideas to assisting in the writing process to editing and refining the script. It's becoming a valuable tool for screenwriters to help them save time and generate new and fresh ideas. The editors will likely be replaced by AI, which will transform how movies, television, and film are created and then viewed. Media strategies. We believe that the algorithms and platforms, like we all know THOR as a media platform, it'll be replaced. The integration, we hope not specifically for core right now, we're not wishing that on anybody. The integration of music creatively in the arts will change. And AI will drive greater product variety with increased personalization, attractiveness, and affordability. As a result, the price of products and the use of products will change. But we believe at THOR, and we should always remember that AI is a machine. And let us never forget what the little prince said, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." The second prediction we'd like to share is what's happening with data. Google's PMax and Meta's Advantage Plus will be retail megastores in the future and will continue to drive successful marketing efforts. Paid social is going to see shifts in delivery of retargeting efforts, and retargeting will be, we believe, the IT strategy. We'd like to share that PMax is an automated campaign type, which we know you know, which means that you can't really target keywords, but you can exclude them. We believe that Performance Max will continue to be sophisticated, and we believe that Google, which doesn't allow right now negative keyword lists in campaigns, will actually change everything and every how that they're doing it, and that PMax will allow the consumer to access all of Google channels from one campaign, which it's doing now, but on a much greater level. We'd like to share that PMax campaigns have completely replaced smart shopping and local campaigns really coming out of 2022, and that they're going to be much more dynamic, a much more dynamic offering in the advertising ecosystem. We'd like to talk a little bit about Meta Advantage Plus, which most of you know. It's using ads as a single image or a video-based image, but think about what I just said about AI, and now think about Meta and Advantage Plus. There'll be automatic creation on multiple variations of ads and campaigns, again, through a personalized variation, and each person receiving the information, we believe, will be very, will have access and most likely will respond to automatically at a much greater level. There'll be text enhancements, media enhancements, and compositional changes. The downside, of course, to using Advantage Plus is the limitations on selecting selections. Right now, you can't do lookalikes in those campaigns. We believe that will change. There's also a time factor for the artificial intelligence, which requires leaving the campaign up and running until it catches up and goes through a learning phase. We believe that's all going to change. So what we want to say about this prediction is that as automation is based on machine learning, we have to always keep in mind we have seen the enemy and he is us.
Wow. I mean, Lori, we know this is all coming. Okay, we know that things are changing, but is the consumer, is the person absorbing all of the content we are all putting out as members of the performance-driven industry? Is it authentic? Is the authenticity going to still be there? Is the creativity going to be there with all of these changes? Because that's something that future generations are very into, this whole authenticity approach of things.
It's a great question. Thank you. I think you're making an assumption that the authenticity is there right now. And I think that when we speak of advertising, we speak of marketing, let us not forget it's driven content based on, I think authenticity is the wrong word. It's really based on opportunity. I'm going to say opportunity. It's based on knowing how to do a call to action, performance based. What's the call to action? I mean, if Fern Lee, CEO of THOR Associates, is known for anything, she's known for being able to create a call to action and have the consumer transact. So it's a great question. I'd love to hear what my colleagues have to say, and I really think Tom can actually write a whole article on that. I think that's an amazing question. I don't really have the specific answer, but I think there's a confluence of how marketing and how advertising is going to work in the future, but it is definitely going to change based on AI.
Extremely. Joseph or Lucio, would you like to chime in on this whole prediction?
All I'm going to say is Lori's presentation was so flawless. It's likely an AI recreation. That's not really you, Lori. It's very close. Very close.
No matter what, no one could ever duplicate that beautiful smile. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Lucio, are you agreeing? This is what's happening, and this is we got to keep up.
Absolutely, and in fact, not to jump too far ahead, but my second prediction has a little bit to do with that as well, about marketing to Gen Z and quote unquote authenticity, right? And how much more media savvy they are right now. So I'll save that to my second prediction, but I absolutely agree with Lori.
Yeah, I think this whole approach of personalization and retargeting, the future is that I, the absorber of this content, matter. And all of this will prove that I matter because you're making sure it's targeted differently through AI, through all these newer platforms. So that's really an interesting approach. It's interesting from my world in public relations. And in public relations, everyone talks about AI and ChatGPT, but it's very interesting in PR because my editors and reporters are saying to me, I need you to provide me with a quote from your client. However, do not generate it through ChatGPT or any other AI source because we will know and we won't then include your client. And so the journalistic world is turning against it and specifically searching to make sure that we are not sending a press release or a press kit or a quote that's been generated by AI. So it's a very interesting thing in a prediction in my world of public relations, especially in the performance-driven marketing arena, is that we have to be very careful in the words that we are sharing from a press standpoint with the press. So that's an interesting note. Thank you, Lori, and Fern for these amazing insights and predictions for 2024. So Lucio Maramba is the CEO and owner of Maramba Insights. So Lucio, share with us your 2024 fearless predictions.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. I appreciate that. So my first prediction has to do with the demise of the cookie, and that first-party data should be a major focus for marketers and agencies going forward. I'm going to get a little bit into the weeds here, just talking about some statistics here and some background. We all know the demise of the cookie has been happening for a while now. In some cases, people are reporting that an estimated 60% or more drop in digital ad revenue on platforms that block cookies. It's pretty huge. Apple has been baking in ways to block or circumvent cookies in their Safari browser for a while now, and many other platforms have followed suit. Google Chrome has developed a new privacy-focused method of data collection and tracking instead of cookies. But most experts agree that these methods will be less granular and exact for tracking users in the original cookie system. What does that mean for us marketers? Well, it means that digital ad placement and targeting of specific groups and segments will be more difficult, at least for the near future. Specific case here. Earlier this month, Google ran a test affecting just 1% of their 3 billion Chrome users using their cookie replacement system, which they called Privacy Sandbox. Now, there's an ad tracking firm called Raptive, and they claim that this test resulted in 30% less ad revenue for advertisers running the exact same ads in the new tracking system versus cookies. It's kind of staggering. It's kind of scary too. If you believe these results, the bottom line is that for the foreseeable future, ad revenue placed in the new cookieless normal may generate significantly less revenue than before. Without any guarantee that the revenue will rebound to previous levels, marketers need to think, at least in the near future, right, about pivoting and shoring up any expected drop in ad revenue, especially if it's possible that we might see some double-digit drops in ad revenue. We don't know yet when these new tracking systems will be up to par with the cookie system, if they ever will be. So why do we get in the weeds there? Well, my prediction is that one way of riding out the cookieless storm and the possible drop in ad revenue from that side of our business is to focus in on opt-in data collection. In other words, first-party data. A lot of our clients are already collecting opt-in data on their existing customers. We hear the term customer lifetime value. It's thrown around a lot in relation to leveraging this first-party data. This focuses on the concept that successfully mining and leveraging your existing first-party data will maximize revenue from your existing customers, and it'll actually help you better target your potential customers. This is a concept I highly recommend researching if you're not familiar with it. And especially if you're a marketer or an agency that's already sitting on a treasure trove of first-party data collected from your customers, but you haven't yet leveraged it to its fullest potential. It's basically another avenue to generate revenue, especially if we're expecting to see drops in revenue from other sides of our business. So while we wait for the new cookieless landscape to settle into the new reality, I think we all need to look inwards and focus on the data we already have and leverage it to help shore up any anticipated losses or efficiencies in our digital ad revenue. My second prediction actually kind of dovetails with the question that Lori fielded earlier. It has to do with marketing budgets going to Gen Z and younger. We've already seen a shift of linear ad budgets starting to move towards and market towards Gen Z. We know that around 40% of young adults are already spending their time on gaming and video-focused social media. We know this will continue to drive a shift in marketing dollars to these non-traditional platforms like Twitch and TikTok from linear. Folks who are successful right now in marketing to this group focus on the quote-unquote authenticity of message and branding to meet Gen Zers where they live. Because I think we all know that the younger generations are more media savvy and more critical of any content they believe is pandering. So our approach in marketing to them has to evolve. We can't just throw the same creative and ad dollars onto these new platforms and expect to get results. I think to Lori's point, really what is authenticity right now, right? As marketers, our job is to, gauge what people will sort of accept and then eventually buy, right? To oversimplify the process. And if we're dealing with a younger generation that is more media savvy, it's not 100% about authenticity. They're already a little jaded. They know they're being marketed to. But I think there's a sense for them that you need to at least meet them where they live and give them a compelling enough message that maybe isn't your father's or your mother's marketing message, right? But something that they can at least embrace and hold on to, and then eventually, put their money behind. So those are my two fearless predictions for 2024. Thank you for the opportunity.
So the thing is we look at these different generations, and we know, in my generation that, we find a brand, we like the brand, and we stick with the brand. But are we finding that Gen Z is not necessarily a lifetime value customer, that Gen Z is looking for new ways to find new things to connect with. And you're saying Twitch, TikTok, are these going to be around for a long time, or are they fads that are coming and going? Because some of these platforms have turned fad oriented. And so that's kind of like part one of my question. And part two is, are marketers spending more dollars on these platforms that may or may not lead to a future growth?
Right. I mean, I can't. I'll leave the ad dollars to my my colleagues here who are the experts in it. But from a research standpoint, I can at least tell you from my own personal experience. I'm 48, and I have a niece who's 15, and it's really amazing to observe how she consumes content. You know, we're talking about authenticity, and you know, my 15-year-old niece can easily spot, you know, when she listens to music, she can easily go, oh, auto tune. Right? She can easily spot what she thinks is not, you know, quote unquote authentic. And yet what's fascinating is she can identify that. She can identify when she's being marketed to, but she can also discern whether she's being pandered to or whether they're actually trying to make a connection. So an example would be, she knows that maybe her favorite boy band is completely auto-tuned, but that doesn't necessarily say she's done with them, right? She kind of accepts that up front and accepts that as part of the experience and part of the product. So that doesn't necessarily preclude, right, her following that group or anything like that. But there's a fascinating thing. I feel like when I was her age, I didn't necessarily have that kind of expertise or knowledge to spot that kind of you know, scenario going on. So I find that fascinating. I also find, you know, to your point about these different platforms, absolutely, we're investing in these what are, you know, emerging or new platforms like TikTok and Twitch in particular. Will those be around in 10 years? Maybe, maybe not. A good example would be Facebook. When it, you know, first came out back in the early and mid 2000s, it was a big thing, right? Nowadays, if you talk to, again, my 15-year-old niece, Facebook is kind of like email. You know, it's like, oh, only my parents are on Facebook. Only my grandparents are on Facebook. And so, you know, I don't know. The answer to the question, to my feeling is that those platforms may be around, and I think what we may be seeing is a generational shift. I'm going to put myself out on the line here. I don't think email is ever going to go away. I think that method of communication is going to be there in some aspect. It may be minimized as the years go by, but I feel that there's a certain generation that is all about email. There's a certain generation that's all about Facebook and Facebook Messenger, and then there's a certain generation that's all about the TikTok and the video snippets and the 15 and the 30-second sound bites. I think there's room for all of that in our media landscape, and I think it's just a matter about the mix of that media, and that's going to change as time goes on.
And DR marketers, performance-driven marketers, have to determine where their customers are at and find them where they're at these platforms or linear or CTV or whatever, or streaming, whatever it might be, because the options keep growing. So
right.
when you're looking at all of that, there's a lot of choice.
And we've been hearing about the demise of TV for how many decades now? And we're all still here, right? The market is absolutely more fragmented, but what we're finding is that all these different mediums, if we find the right balance, they work really well together. So right. I do feel like there's kind of room for everyone, and it's just a matter of the right mix and the right approach.
Yeah, and we certainly look at, you know, the Emmys and the Golden Globes and all of these award shows, and how many winners were on streaming platforms, you know, as opposed to, you know, traditional linear. So it's showing this, you know, everything old is new again kind of approach of things. And so thank you, Lucio, for that, for those insights. And when we're talking really about data, Joseph Gray is the founder of DRMetrix. He is certainly our guru in this area of data. So what are your predictions?
Well, I can make a lot of educated predictions for 2024. You know, we all anticipate the continued growth of, you know, streaming and CTV media. honestly, these continue to be priced on a premium basis. So traditional linear continues to be critical for DRTV scale. So over the weekend, I did some data analysis to determine if one could make a reasonable prediction of the linear DRTV marketplace in 2024. Granted, only 13 days of Q1 data exist at the moment. So for this particular study, I focused on traditional short form DR product and lead generation campaigns. I analyzed historical data going as far back as 2016 across 24 cable networks that DRMetrix has consistently monitored, and which run a lot of DR, networks like Fox News Channel, CNN, ESPN, TV Land, Inspiration, Game Show Network, Hallmark, HGTV, History, TLC Discovery, and others. And with the exception of a couple of anomaly years, thank you, COVID, the percentage of airings measured in the first 13 days of each historic year to the full year airings ranged from a low of 4.29% to a max of 4.53% with an average of 4.4%. Due to COVID, I decided to throw out the lowest and the highest values across the 8-year period, leaving me with 6 years of data that fell within that range. Now, the last presidential and Olympic cycle was in 2020, and there was still some remaining effect from COVID, but in the first 13 days of that year, there were 23,000 DRTV airings from the 24 studied networks. So that represented 4.06% of the year-end result of around 570,000 airings. Now, remember, we're only counting traditional DRTV product and lead generation campaigns. The election cycle back in 2016 had a little over 28,000 airings in the first 13 days, which was 4.35% of the 2016 yearly total, which was a little over 656,000 airings. So looking at the data for the first 13 days of 2024, we've measured around 20,000 airings versus 25,000 the year prior. So assuming this represents 4.4% average of total 2024 airings, we're looking at a decline of about 17.32% year over year. So, some headwinds, big surprise, coming into this new year. I think we already expected with Olympics and the presidential election that there was going to be some headwinds to contend with, but we're also seeing it right off the bat, right at the beginning of the year, with a reduction in total airings across those 24 studied networks. Now, what we can't predict with DRMetrix data is the consumer side. How responsive are consumers going to be in 2024 over 2023? How will conversion rates improve potentially? And while we do see economic conditions steadily and slowly improving over the last year, my hope is that translates into a better response, even though as an industry we're getting perhaps less media based on market competition. But perhaps that's a little bit of a bridge gap in what I'm predicting is going to be a tighter media environment. Now, this will be to the benefit of our friends on the media side, of course, especially on the linear side, cable networks and the like. But, it's a cautionary tale for those of us in the product and lead generation industries. And so I don't know if you'd really call that a prediction, but that's sort of what the data is telling us as a story.
It's interesting because you kind of look at it as, okay, will those numbers go up because of those purchasing spots on traditional news channels are kind of had enough of those traditional news channels. And I know people might be flooding to some of the other channels to get away from the news, because so many times, on a personal level, how many times have you heard people say, oh, don't watch the news, stop watching the news, turn to something else. So, is there any way to look at any of that, Joseph, in the way that you do analytics?
I mean, there's so many variables. There's so many different ways of looking at things. Just from a very top line perspective, seeing that there was a relatively tight correlation between first 13-day results in terms of just airing measurement and what we see at the end of the year in terms of the total airings for these categories. We didn't see huge anomalies during 2016 or 2020. So perhaps that argues that these particular networks, they're always going to start out in Q1 doing a lot of DR. But when you get into a cycle where brand direct and brand advertisers are stepping back into the media landscape, on the linear side, you're going to see less clearance for traditional DR. So year over year on the same group of networks, seeing a sizable decline, gives us a pace of what the year's likely going to look at, despite some of these other anomalies that we're seeing. But again, there could be outliers that the data can't really take into account, and we'll see what happens as the year progresses. I might redo this study in a couple months when we have a better baseline established.
Then we might have to do middle of the year changes to fearless predictions, or middle of the year the fearless predictions staying the same. And certainly looking at DRTV advertisers, are the less traditional DRTV advertisers going to be the norm? Because we look back and the DRTV advertisers that we might have talked about 10 years ago, 5 years ago, are kind of less evident, and new names and new non-traditional seem to be moving more, I don't want to say to the forefront, but more moving up the ladder.
Sure. When you look at more branded direct-to-consumer types of advertisers that have literally flooded into our industry the last decade, and in scatter market TV media buying, they've been hugely disruptive to traditional DR media buying. I would say that the early data suggests that, yeah, it's going to be a year where you're going to see more traditional brand and certainly more branded direct response, digitally native DTC companies spending more, maybe pulled back a little bit due to economic concerns in 2023. Now they're starting to see the market recover, inflation maybe getting a little bit under control, maybe a little bit of a loosening of the purse. And again, these things are cyclic. So you'll have some growth on that side of the industry, which will impact direct response. And then, of course, when we got into heavily the COVID year, when brand direct and digitally native really just pulled off the air, traditional DR had a field day. You could see that in the data, and we've done studies about that. It was fascinating, even at a time when Nielsen was making mistakes, which is, it's all been published. That's not news to anyone. During the depth of COVID, not really understanding the household using television or HUT levels properly. DRTV advertisers, because of the measurement component, in real time, we saw that consumer response was bouncing, that household viewership was at an all-time high. That's a great formula for traditional DR. And so, the DR industry had a field day. And, it'd be great, we don't want to wish COVID on anyone, but from a business perspective, we like those cycles. We're able to take advantage when all the other advertisers that are relying on Nielsen or traditional metrics pull off the air,
And, you look at those then and now, and I guess, Lucio and Lori, if you could just chime in on a year ago, we were all talking about, are we about to enter a recession? When we all got together in January of 2023, the world was panicking. A recession was coming. And of course, it didn't end up being as dire as what had been predicted. So now we're looking forward to 2023. And obviously, something like AI, all of these other systems cost money. There's expenses to all of this to make sure that we're generating things, the data, the research, the creatives. So what are your inputs on spending for, let's talk a little bit about money. Let's talk about what's the prediction maybe on brands and marketers and spending on all of our services moving forward for 2024. Lori, go ahead.
I think there's there's a few things that we have to address. The first thing I'd like to say is, I think, Joe, thank you, because every time you speak, it's magical. You always make and inspire me, and I have like a million things I want to say back to you. But to answer Andrea, the one thing I want to say is coming into 2023, when you ask about a recession, I think we have to remember that we were also on the tail end of the supply chain being strangled.
Mhm.
And that was big. And to that effort of easing, there became incredible rise in interest rates. So I had a conversation recently with somebody, and the question came up, why in this political arena, not to talk about politics, but why is it an issue that household goods are so expensive under the Biden administration? And my answer was, it's not that household goods are so expensive, it's that the cost of money is so expensive, and the supply chain is still being strangled. It hasn't reached its threshold for ease. So when you ask about money, when we talk about what's happening in the economy, there are little caveats that really have to be remembered. And when you bring that back to marketing, and you bring that back to the cost of advertising. I mean, one thing that also we have to remember, it's always going to be supply and demand. If you look at Q4, Joseph, will certainly speak to this, but if you look at all the insurance advertising, they took up all the inventory. So thinking about how and what is going to happen economically it's always hard to predict, but it's really also very hard to understand. I think it's hard to understand. I think the average consumer, is fluctuating between what is, what was, and what will be. And at the same time, we as marketers have learned very clearly that personalization of messaging, consistency of content, and the ability to engage a consumer in the proper consumer journey is the only way we're going to see performance-driven transactional revenue grow.
Thank you, Lori. Lucio, do you want to chime in on that a little bit?
Absolutely agree. And just to take that a little bit further, I think to Joseph's point specifically, and thank you for the analysis of that data, particularly in COVID. I think if there is a silver lining that COVID brought to the forefront in relation to our industry, and this is a little self-serving because I work in I help my clients with their analytics and with the data they already have. It's that I feel like a lot of agencies in particular and marketers really went back to the fundamentals, right? They, because of the way that COVID affected all of us, we really had to sort of look inward. And it's one of the reasons why one of my predictions was about first party data. I've always been sort of on a soapbox about, we collect and there's so much data out there. And I feel like so many times when there's too much data, there's almost this paralysis, right? How am I ever going to get through this? And it's so siloed. And instead of actually trying to put the time and the effort into connecting these individual silos or connecting different data sources, whether it's within our own company or whether it's cooperating with other companies, oftentimes we just don't put the work into it. And I feel like COVID gave us that time to really focus inwards and look at the data we've already been collecting and put that time and effort into it and actually say, oh, wow, there may actually be another revenue stream here if we actually did connect the dots, right? And start looking into subscription models or newsletters or, opt-in ways to collect data from our existing customers that's going to help us, profile or segment and look for other similar customers. And we didn't have to pay money for that. What we had to pay for was just the time and the effort and the expertise to analyze the data. Right, we already had. So I think for me, if there was a silver lining of COVID, it gave us the time to go back to those fundamentals, particularly when it comes to sifting through and analyzing our data and connecting the dots. And a lot of my clients, I think, have benefited from that. We've, uncovered some insights which were kind of always there. I like to say we're not, it's not rocket science. We're not reinventing the wheel, but what we are doing is we're taking the time to connect the dots. And what we'll often find is there'll be an opportunity or two that we can latch onto that if we hadn't looked at the data in a specific way, we never would have uncovered. So that's kind of my perspective on that. I feel that coming out of this now, out of COVID and going into 2024, I'm very hopeful that a lot of my clients and other agencies are going to continue that pattern, that they're not just going to forget about the time and the effort they spent in connecting those dots during COVID, but that's actually going to be a practice they're going to continue with in their business because of the opportunities they were able to uncover.
And I think that's a great word, hopeful, as we look forward, to 2024. And certainly looking in my lane, in my public relations and dealing with the press lane, we're not always looking at the biggest number. Getting featured on the TV show that has the highest viewership or the newspaper that has the highest circulation. It's targeted to make sure that we're reaching the audience that will actually be making a difference, be reaching out to that client, purchasing that product, purchasing that book, purchasing that service, because it's not all about, the olden days. You want press in the Wall Street Journal, but your audience may not be reading the Wall Street Journal. So I think that looking at numbers and data and the right way to find your audience and the hopefulness for 2024, now that we have experienced so much with COVID, and I think we learned a lot, and I think we grew a lot during COVID. So I want to sort of open it up to everyone to kind of give like a final comment about 2024. And I know you had your predictions, but what about your business personally? What are you looking forward to? So Lori, I'm going to start with you.
It's a great question. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you both to my colleagues here on this webinar. I'm thrilled. I didn't really think we were all going to get into this, what we're getting into. And my mind can't stop spinning. We at THOR are looking forward to 2024. We have been in business really for 17 years. We're very grateful to everyone in this industry, the friends, the colleagues, the referrals that we get. We have really opened ourselves up. We have a digital division now. We believe that 2024 is going to bring growth. We think that COVID didn't stymie us. We were lucky, but it didn't give everyone the opportunity to think. That's the only way I can say it. I don't believe that people, I think they were in fear mode. And I think that where I speak to, I hope I speak for Fern and our team, we believe that the collaboration of disruption and the collaboration of opportunity is going to converge, and we believe that 2024 is going to be stellar.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lori. Lucio.
Absolutely agree. At Maramba Insights, we're very much looking forward to 2024. I started this business just 5 years ago in 2018, a little before the pandemic, but I've been involved in DR since 1997 when I started way back at Mercury Media. And I think for me, 2024 looks, I'm very hopeful. Like I said, I feel like we're coming out of COVID. We've all learned a lot, and I think we've all grown a lot. Prior to COVID, I remember, talking with potential clients and talking about analytics and talking about mining the data you already have, and in some cases getting blank stares, and in other cases saying, well, that's just too expensive. We don't have the time to do that. And I think now we've all kind of learned that we're leaving money on the table if we don't spend the time and the effort in looking at the data we've already collected. And so when I'm very hopeful about 2024, because when I do talk with my current clients and with potential clients, I don't have to explain what analytics are. I don't have to explain, why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm very happy about that. And that makes me very hopeful about the future, and particularly about 2024, because the data is always going to be there. And if anything, the amounts of it are going to grow. So we're all going to need to make sure that we spend the time and the effort in understanding it if we're going to be able to find more opportunities and more insights to grow our businesses.
Great, thank you so much. Joseph, your final thoughts on 2024?
Well, I want to be optimistic about 2024, despite all the nonsense that we're going to be looking forward to at the end of the year. I think that DRTV marketers can do more with less. And a lot of that is optimization, as we've been discussing. Obviously, DRMetrix, we provide the tools competitively so that one can really understand what's working best from a creative perspective and also from a media execution perspective, what network day parts, et cetera, are really working for a given industry category, again, for optimization purposes. If we continue to see consumer confidence increase, if we continue to see a recovery on the part of consumer response and conversion, we could have a pretty nice year. I think that viewership will certainly favor some of the big DR networks that we buy on, especially as people become more interested in news-related items and political-related items. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I think that even though we may ultimately, projected-wise, to have less media availability going into this new year, I think we as an industry can persevere, and we can double our efforts and do more with less, and hopefully consumer recovery will give us some kind of boost in that process.
Exactly. Well, I'd certainly like to thank Lori, Lucio, and Joseph for being part of our PDMI Workshop Council's 2024 Fearless Predictions webinar. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say a special thank you to Tom and JY for giving me the chance to chair the PDMI Workshop Council for the past 5.5 years. It has been my honor to work with all of you. I am stepping down as the chair of the Workshop Council, but I will remain an active member of our council and be involved and always available for PDMI members when it comes to the topic of public relations outreach. So it's always great to look at where we came from and where we're going, and know that we all have this positive approach to 2024. So Tom, I don't know if there are any additional questions as we wrap up today. So
there are a few questions.
Okay, so Tom, share some questions with us.
I'm going to go ahead and rejoin you on the screen for these.
Thank you, Tom.
Actually, your last question there, Andrea, led perfectly into an audience question. Would the panel be willing to share one thought about 2024 that keeps them up at night? You have the positive side, but is there something that you're struggling with or worried about?
Wow, look at everyone looking upwards. So
I sleep really well at night.
Jump in on that just from a press standpoint, because I come from a different world than everyone else does, but certainly from a press standpoint, the hardest part is that to reach people is old-fashioned email. And, so sometimes that keeps me up at night because I'm like, oh, I'm waiting for that information from that journalist. And of course, they get to you in time before the deadline to make sure they've given you the information. But there are times I'm up at night saying, we're on a deadline. We gave the journalist everything to be included in that story. We didn't hear back. And then we hear back. And of course, the client is featured. But I think for me, it's still that it's always hurry up and wait in my world. And so that's the only thing that keeps me up at night is the hurry up and wait aspect of public relations. Joseph, it looked like you had a thought there.
I said I sleep like a baby, so. Counting my blessings at my age.
Okay, Lucio, do you have something that's keeping you up at night?
Just from the technical standpoint, a lot of my work has to do with making sense of existing client data. And what I'm finding is more and more is, especially with the digital side, social media and so forth, what keeps me up at night is having a new source of data that it would be difficult to connect to or difficult to access, and trying to find those key points that connect it to existing data, right, to more traditional DR or retail data. More and more, there are a lot of vendors out there that are claiming to be able to provide connectors and data connectors and so forth. And it gets harder and harder sometimes to figure out who's the real deal and who's just sort of fly by night. And so, not to get too much into the weeds, but that's something that keeps me up at night, is waking up in the morning and having a client say, hey, I've got these 3 or 4 new sources of data, and having to basically try and do the research and figure out how do we connect all of these, and who do I talk to. It seems like more and more vendors are all about chat and so forth, and not actually talking to a real person. So, or a programmer, God forbid. So those are the kind of things that keep me up at night, is just sort of the technical side and making sure that my clients are happy. If I'm doing my job like a special effect in a movie, you believe the dinosaur is real, but when it's bad. So I just need to make sure that I keep up with the technology as it evolves to make sure that I can keep my clients happy. That's what keeps me up at night.
Lori, take us home.
We really don't stay up at night because we work so hard during the day, and we work so many hours during the day. By the time we go to sleep, we are out. The only thing I would say is we worry for our clients. We worry for our clients. We worry, what's going to happen with, I can't be specific because it would be inappropriate, but there are things that happen within our clients, and we're very blessed that we're so close with them. We know when they're suffering, and we're empathetic and compassionate to their needs. And I think that's one of the things that's kept us successful over the years. And we're grateful for the relationships, and we're worried for them.
That's outstanding, Lori. Hey, let me get one more in here before we get to the top of the hour. This is a decent group one to kick around. For nearly 2 decades, the industry has said the brands are coming, with social, digital, and connected TV media all being performance-based. Is it safe to say in 2024 that the brands are here? If so, why? I don't know if there's an if so, why, but I didn't want to ask a yes/no question.
Well, the brands, if we're talking direct to consumer, more branded call to action, .com, native .com companies, well, they've been here for a long time, and they have just disrupted a lot of the traditional DR media availability across linear, and it goes back way more than a decade. So the brands have been here for a long time, and you get into DRMetrix and you filter for brand DR, and you look at those types of digitally native companies and how much media they're buying, and compare that to like traditional DR advertisers. It is and the pace of growth year over year, with the exception of years like COVID, it's been building up to COVID. 2020, 2021, there were just huge year-over-year rates of growth with these types of brands flooding into traditional linear, television and scatter. So yeah, we all know we've been dealing with this influx of brands for quite some time.
Lucio, you want to speak first, or you want me to add another of my 2 cents?
Please go right ahead, Lori.
I want to say another thing so that he can then say, very good, Lori, because every time I say something, this guy, my heart is swelling. I want to just say one thing. When you ask about, are the brands here, I think what's really important to understand, it's not that the brands are here or not here. It's how much money are the brands willing to put into the opportunity to change their business model to become performance driven. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us, all of us that are on this panel, and many of us that work and our colleagues. There is less disruption and more opportunity because marketing senior leadership is willing to shift. And I think that's fabulous. And I welcome it, and I look forward to it. And I think it gives us, I'm not sure if it was Lucio or Joseph who talked about, I think it was Lucio, silos. It gives us the opportunity to not stay in our silos and to actually collaborate and go beyond. And it makes us wildly successful. It makes the brand successful. It makes us what we do for them. And it makes the consumer rich in how they live and as their lives keep changing. Okay, buddy, I'm kicking it off to you.
Well, believe it or not, I absolutely agree with you, Lori. What I would add is I'm always very happy whenever one of my clients who are typically agencies have a client from the branding side that isn't just treating DR like the redheaded stepchild, right? That they're actually willing to commit the time and the resources, and they're not just doing it because they need to allocate a certain amount of their budget to DR, right? And just sort of ignore it. I'm always happy when I see brands come in and actually commit to our medium, because I think it makes everyone better. And it's not just sort of a throwaway line item in their marketing budget. It's actually something they're looking into as a possible avenue of growth. And from a respect standpoint, we've all been in this industry for a long time, and it feels good when a brand comes in and actually understands what we do and understands that there is nuance in what we do and how we execute our jobs, and takes the time to understand how to actually roll out a campaign successfully, so that it's not just a line item in their marketing budget, it actually adds and floats the rest of the boats as well.
Tremendous, great way to go out. Really appreciate that. Appreciate all of you for being here, Lori, Joseph, Lucio, Andrea, of course. Wonderful job moderating this group. We missed you, Doug Plank, and we missed you, Jeffrey DeVere. Both of them had some things come up right before the event and had to step aside, but I feel like we got more than enough from this group, no doubt about it. Some great thinking, some great feedback. So appreciate it, Andrea. To your note about stepping aside as the chair, John and I appreciate your efforts over the last 5 years. You really helped. The Workshop Council was our first council at the PDMI. You've driven it really, really well, and we look forward to keeping you involved. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you're a PDMI member, would like to get involved in one of our 7 member councils, you can reach out to me today to share your interest. We'd be happy to find a place for you. A lot of action going on here at the PDMI, and we'd love to have you take part. Your next opportunity to attend a PDMI event live online is next Wednesday, January 24th at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, when the Brand Response Council airs its latest episode of Take 20, a look at the state of call center technology and customer service. To Lucio's point, not a lot of people want to talk to people anymore, but it makes it even more important when they do. To register, please visit thepdmi.com/take-20. Finally, online registration continues for PDMI East, April 8th through 10th at Eden Rock, Miami Beach, with a wide array of educational and networking events planned. PDMI East will be Performance Marketers' must-attend event of the spring. When you get your badge now, priced at $395 for PDMI members and $595 for non-members, you'll be guaranteed access to all the show has to offer, and you'll also be at the head of the line to book your room at the host hotel at our discounted rate. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-East to get your badge today. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you all for speaking today. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.